For this project, you'll need 2 different colors of worsted weight yarn, a 4mm crochet hook, a 5mm crochet hook, a tape measure, and a pair of scissors. And I will put how many yards or how many grams I used of each color down below in the description box. So a little disclaimer before the video. This tutorial is going to be a little bit different than my other ones. In my other videos, I usually give you guys exact formulas and measurements to use throughout the project, but with the way I had to create this dress, I was kind of unable to do that. So instead, I am going to break this dress up into 5 separate parts. And you will need to know a few measurements kind of for benchmarks, but they're not going to be something that you follow to a T. So the first measurement you're going to need to know is your waist measurement. The second measurement will be the hip measurement. Your third measurement is going to be from the waistline down to however long you want your skirt to be. And then the fourth measurement is going to be from where you took your hip measurement to where you took the waist measurement. So those are kind of the measurements you're going to need to get. But again, they're going to be kind of like a rough outline. We're not going to have to follow them exactly. So what I'll do is after each part that I finish, I will put the dress on as it is so far so that you guys can see how it looks on my body. And that way when you are making this, you can also kind of mirror what's happening on my body, hopefully make that, translate that into your dress with my instructions, and it will just give you guys a better idea of what it's supposed to look like. So with that being said, that's a lot of explanation. Let's just get right into the video. So to start the dress, take whichever color you prefer to start with and make a slip knot. Then grab your 5mm crochet hook, pop it on your slip knot, and tighten. So we're going to be working from the bottom of our dress all the way to the top. And the first measurement we are going to be working with is your hip measurement. So whatever your hip measurement is, that is how long our foundation row is going to be when we stretch it out. So we're making what I like to call a houndstooth foundation row, which is essentially a single crochet foundation row stitch followed by a double crochet foundation row stitch, and we're just alternating them. But I already made a video on how to do this, so I'll just put it up in the corner right there for those of you who haven't seen it yet. So first we're going to chain up 2. You're going to insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, making sure to pick up the front and back loops. You'll yarn over, pull through that chain. Then with 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first loop. Then with 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through the last 2. Now that is going to be the first single crochet, so it's time to work a double crochet into the bottom stitch right here. So I'm going to yarn over, insert into the bottom stitch, picking up both the front and back loops. I'll yarn over, pull through just that bottom stitch. And now with 3 loops on your hook, you're going to want to yarn over, pull through just the first loop. Alright, so now with 3 loops on your hook again, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. And with 2 loops on your hook, you want to yarn over, pull through the last 2. So you are just going to alternate doing 1 single crochet foundation stitch and 1 double crochet foundation stitch until you reach your hip measurement. And remember that this foundation row needs to stretch to your hip measurement. Also, you need to be ending this row on a single crochet. So once you're done with that, come on back and I'll show you how we are going to finish up this round. So once you finish your foundation row, again making sure to end on a single crochet, Check it against a tape measure just once more, making sure to stretch it out just so that you know that it is the length of your hip measurement. So for me, my hip measurement was 38 inches and that was a total of 115 stitches. So now what we're going to do is we want to connect both ends together to create a round, which is what we're going to be working in for the whole of our skirt. To connect these two ends, what we're going to do is make a double crochet starting in this bottom stitch right here, and then we're going to finish that double crochet in the bottom stitch of the first single crochet of this round. So we are going to yarn over and insert into the bottom stitch. Going to yarn over and pull through that bottom stitch, and then when we have 3 loops on your hook, you're going to pick up your other end, making sure that this is all straightened out. Okay, and then you are going to insert your hook into the bottom stitch of the first single crochet, so right here. Okay, now once all that's on your hook, oops, you're going to yarn over and pull through that first stitch, that bottom stitch, and then you're also going to pull through the first loop on your hook. All right, so now you'll have 3 loops on your hook, so you're going to yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. And then with 2 loops on your hook, you're going to drop your first color, and then you're going to pick up your second color yarn. All right, now put that on your hook, oops, and pull it through those last 2 loops. All right, so now to finish up this round, what we're going to do is find the very first single crochet stitch, and we're going to take that second color, insert a hook into that first stitch, and then make a slip stitch. So to start round 2, we're going to make 1 single crochet in that very first double crochet stitch. So we're going to insert. All right, and then in the second stitch, I'm going to make a double crochet. All right, and I'm weaving in all of my ends as well. In that third stitch, I'm going to make 1 single crochet. And in the fourth stitch, we'll make a double crochet. And what you're going to do is just alternate between these single crochets and double crochets all the way around round 2. So I'll meet you guys back up at the end. And in the very last stitch, make a double crochet, but make sure that you don't finish that double crochet. So once you have 2 loops left on your hook, drop the yarn you're working with and pick up your non-working yarn. Then you want to yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Then to finish off this round, you are going to slip stitch into the very first single crochet stitch of the round. All right, now for round 3, you're going to chain up 1, flip your work, and we're going to repeat round 2. So you can see the stitches a little better here. What we're doing in each round is placing, say you have a double crochet in the previous round. So round 2, we start with a double crochet. So in round 3, we're going to put a single crochet on top of it. If we see a single crochet in the previous round, we'll put a double crochet on top of it. And it's just going to be alternating all the way around. And that's really how you do a houndstooth stitch. So in the very first stitch, it's a double crochet, which means I'm placing 1 single crochet in the first stitch. In the next stitch, I'll place a double crochet. Oops. Then in the following stitch, a single crochet, and then a double crochet. And you are just going to be repeating round 2 until you reach measurement 5. And I haven't told you what measurement 5 is yet. So what you'll do is you'll take your measurement 3, you'll subtract it from your measurement 4, and that will be what measurement 5 is. And measurement 5 is going to be the length of this very first part of the skirt that we are doing. So just keep repeating round 2 until you reach the length of measurement 5, whatever that may be for you. So once you're done with that, come on back and I'll show you how to start on part 2, where we're going to be decreasing the dress. All right, so once you've reached your measurement B, what I want you to do is try your skirt on so far and make sure that it's hitting right where the widest part of your hip is, which is going to be pretty much the middle of your butt. So check it and make sure that you like the length of the skirt so far. If you want it longer or shorter, then just add or subtract rows as you see fit, and just disregard your measurement B altogether, because the measurements in this pattern are really not, they don't really matter as much as some of my other ones. So anyways, try this on, and it's going to be pretty much right where your butt begins to slope into your back. That's where you want to put it, and see if it fits how you want to. So after you're done with that, let's get right on to step 2, where we're going to start decreasing this skirt up into our waist. So I just finished the first step of the skirt, and the length is a little bit less than 8 inches long for me. Of course, that's going to depend on you though, and your preferences. So now for step 2, we are going to start decreasing our skirt to fit our waist. So what you need to do is count however many stitches you made in a row. So for me, that was 116. Then you want to divide that by 4. So for me, 116 divided by 4 was 29 stitches. Then what you want to do is find your seam. This is going to be our back seam. And starting at the back seam, you want to count over the number of stitches you just divided by 4. So I guess for me, I counted over 29 stitches on this side of the seam, and then I placed a stitch marker. And then I did the same thing on the opposite side of the seam and placed a stitch marker. And this is where you are going to be decreasing your skirt. Now I also want to point out that everybody's step 2 is going to be different, because we're trying to decrease to our waistline, right? So everybody's hip to waist ratio is different. So for me, what I'm doing is I am making decreasing rows all the way to my waist, but for others, you may either want to decrease every other row or maybe every few rows. So it's really going to depend on you. And that's why I suggest during the whole second step is every few rows you should try on the skirt, and that way you can see if it is either getting too tight too fast or it's too loose, and you can adjust depending on that. So with that being said, let me show you how to do the decreasing rows. All right, so I've already chained one and flipped my work. We are just continuing on really with the pattern that we've been doing. The only difference is that we are going to be decreasing in the stitch that we marked with the stitch marker. So as we've been doing before, I chained one, turned my work, and now we're going to be making, one single crochet in the very first stitch, alternating with a double crochet in the next one. And you're just going to keep alternating until you reach the stitch with the stitch marker. All right, now that I've hit that stitch marker, I'm going to take it out, and we are now going to make a decreasing houndstooth stitch in the next 2 stitches. So as you can see, we stopped on a double crochet, which means the decreasing stitch will start with a single crochet. So that means insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then with 2 loops on your hook, we are going to start a double crochet in the following stitch. So yarn over, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then with 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4. And that's going to be our decreasing stitch. So what you're going to do is take that little stitch marker and place it in the stitch you just made. So right in here. And that way you can keep up with where your decreases are. So you're just going to continue with the houndstooth stitch pattern until you reach the other stitch marker. So again, when you see a double crochet, make sure to place a single crochet on top. All right, and then a single crochet, place a double crochet. So just keep alternating until you reach the other stitch marker. All right, so now I'm at my other stitch marker, so I'm going to take that out. And then in the next 2 stitches, we're going to make a decrease. So this first stitch is now a single crochet, which means we are going to start our decrease with a double crochet. So you're going to yarn over, insert into that next stitch, you'll yarn over and pull through. Then with 3 loops on your hook, we're going to make a single crochet in the next stitch, which means we'll insert our hook, yarn over and pull through, and then with 4 loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over, pull through all 4, and that will be your decrease. Then grab your stitch marker again and place it in that decreasing stitch you just made. Okay, and then just continue alternating until you get to the very beginning of this round. All right, and then in that last stitch, make your double crochet but don't finish. Pick up your other color, finish the stitch, and then slip stitch into the very first stitch of the round. All right. Okay, so that's going to be our first row of the decreasing rows. So now we're going to chain 1, flip our work again, and then just repeat the exact same thing. So I will show you guys one more row of this. Again, first stitch is a double crochet, so we'll make 1 single crochet in the very first stitch, double crochet, and we're just going to keep alternating until we reach that stitch marker. All right, so now in this stitch, I'm going to take out the stitch marker and we're going to do the exact same thing we did in the previous row. So this is what we're going to call a double crochet stitch right here, this decrease, just because this next stitch is a single crochet and that will keep in line with the pattern. So that means we are going to insert our hook into this decrease, yarn over, pull through, so that's like a single crochet, and then in the next stitch, yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, and now with the 4 loops on your hook, you'll yarn over and pull through all 4. Grab your stitch marker and place it back in that stitch you just made. All right, this next stitch is a double crochet, so we'll place 1 single crochet and then continue our alternating pattern until we reach the other stitch marker. All right, so once again, we've reached the other stitch marker, so we'll take it out. And now let's see, we just ended with a double crochet, so this next stitch that we are going to start with a decrease will be a single crochet. So insert, yarn over, pull through with 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and insert into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through that, and then with 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. Then grab your stitch marker and place it in the stitch you just made. Oops, excuse me. All right, now continuing our alternating pattern, we see a single crochet, which means we're putting a double crochet on top. All right, and then just keep up with the alternating single and double crochets until you reach the beginning of the round. All right, then in that last stitch, change color and slip stitch into the very first stitch of the round. All right, so that is how you are going to do the decreasing part of your dress. Just continue making a decrease in both of the little stitch markers until you reach kind of your waist measurement. So what I want you guys to do is make, I would say, at least 5 of these decreasing rows. Then I want you to try your skirt on and see if it's too tight or too loose for you. I don't think it would be too loose, but it could be too tight. So if it's too tight, I would suggest trying to do every other row of decreasing. So you do 1 row of decreasing, then for row 2, you just do a row of normal houndstooth stitch, then for row 3, decreasing, row 4, normal, and just continue doing that. So I'm going to work up a few more rows of this and then try it on for you guys. So I just finished making 10 rows of the decreasing on either side of the skirt. And for me, this is what I'm going to keep doing until I reach my waistline. So I'm going to keep doing the rows of decreasing pretty much until I reach my waist. Now, if you're finding that this is too much of a decrease for you, then I would suggest doing every other row as a decrease. And you also want to make sure that you are trying on your skirt until you reach, your waist measurement where we're gonna stop, just to make sure that you can either pull it over your hips or over your shoulders. So for me, I actually had to stop a little bit before my actual waist measurement because I was unable to pull it over my shoulders or my hips. So definitely make sure that you are always checking that your skirt is able to actually get on your body in some way, shape, or form. So if you're finding that you made a row and it's just too tight, you can't fit it over your hips or shoulders, then just undo that row. Find a row where you're able to comfortably put it on somehow, and then I would suggest just doing rows of normal houndstooth stitch until you reach where your waist sits. Now, when you're ready for step 3, what you're going to do on that very last row of the decreasing stitches is just complete the row without changing color. So once you have done your last row and you've slip stitched to the very first stitch of the round, you're going to chain 1, grab your scissors, and you're going to cut actually both of the ends of the yarn. All right. Then you're going to pull through to tighten. So once I finished that step 2, my skirt was just about 15 inches long. All right, so I just finished the part 2, which is a decreasing part of our skirt, and I made a total of 21 decreasing rows. Now, as you can see, when I put the skirt right up on my waistline, it's a little bit bigger than my actual waist, and that's just because I couldn't fit it over my shoulders anymore. So I also am comfortable with the length of the skirt when it sits right about on my waist. So if you have finished your part 2 and you're not comfortable with the length of your skirt, then I would just continue doing this part until you like the length of your skirt. So now that that's done, let's get into part 3, which is going to be the beginning of our top. So the first thing you're going to want to do is count the stitches of the very last row you made. Once you have that number, divide it by 4, and then starting at the back seam, you are going to count over to that number and place your little stitch markers again. So for me, I had 74 stitches in this last row. Divide that by 4 and you get 18.5. So on one side of my back seam, I counted over 18 stitches, and on the other side of my back seam, I counted over 19 stitches. And then I just placed my little bobby pins. So this is where we are going to actually start splitting the top. So we're making one side of the top first, and then the other side afterwards. Now this last row that we did was going from right to left. As you can see, we slip stitched in that first single crochet of the round, and to keep in line with the houndstooth stitch pattern, we're always going to flip our work. So that means we want to flip the work and make sure that you are working in the opposite direction. So it's kind of like you're working on the inside of the skirt. You can start at either end of your bobby pin, but just make sure that you're working in the opposite direction of the last round. I'm going to start in this one over here. Okay, so first you want to attach a slip knot with the opposite color yarn from the previous round. Then in your stitch with the stitch marker, you're going to take that out, insert your hook, and make a slip stitch. All right, then you're going to chain up 1. And for the first row of this side of the top, we're going to be working from this stitch that just had the stitch marker in it, all the way over to the stitch right before the opposite stitch marker. And the first 3 rows of this side are going to be decreasing stitches with 1 decrease on the beginning of the row and 1 decrease on the end of the row. So in our first 2 stitches, we're going to make a decreasing houndstooth stitch like we've been doing. So the very first stitch is a single crochet, which means, we're going to start with a double crochet. So we'll yarn over, insert into the first stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then in the next stitch, which is a double crochet, we're just going to insert, yarn over, pull through like a single crochet, then we'll yarn over and pull through all 4. So that will be our first decrease right there. Then we're just going to continue the houndstooth pattern, which means we see a single crochet next, which is going to be 1 double crochet. Then we'll alternate with a single crochet next, followed by a double crochet. And you're going to continue the alternating pattern until you reach the last 2 stitches right before the opposite stitch marker. Alright, so now we're at the last 2 stitches right before this other stitch marker. So we're going to do a decreasing houndstooth stitch in both of these stitches. So you can see the next stitch is a double crochet, which means we will start with a single crochet. So insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. So with 4 loops on your hook, you're going to drop this color and then pick up your opposite color and pull through all 4 loops on your hook. Alright, so that's the end of row 1. So now you're going to chain up 1 and then flip your work, which is a lot of work by now. And then we're just going to repeat the exact same thing for row 2. So in the very first stitch, you can see it's a single crochet. So we'll insert our hook. Oops, we'll yarn over and insert our hook. Yarn over, pull through. And then we're going to insert our hook into the next stitch. Yarn over, pull through. And then with 3 loops on your hook, you'll yarn over, pull through all 4. 4. So the next stitch is a single crochet, which means we'll make a double crochet. Alright, as you can see, I'm still carrying the other color yarn as well. So you're just going to continue alternating these stitches until you reach the last 2 stitches on the row, and then you are going to make a decreasing houndstooth stitch. So I'll meet you back at the opposite end. Alright, last 2 stitches, which means 1 more decreasing houndstooth stitch. So this is a double crochet, which means we'll start with a single crochet, go in the very last stitch. Alright, with 4 loops on your hook, you're going to change color once again, then chain 1, flip your work, and then just repeat this row 1 more time. So now I've finished 1, 2, 3 rows of the decreasing stitches, both on the beginning and end of the row. So now what we're going to do is just regular houndstooth stitches all the way down the row and up. So let me show you how to do that. As you can see, I've already changed colors, and I also chained up 1, so I'm flipping my work right here. So now we're just doing regular houndstooth stitch, which means our very first stitch is a single crochet, so we're going to start with a double crochet in the very first stitch. Alright, then a single crochet, double crochet in the next stitch, and just keep alternating all the way down the row. Alright, and the very last stitch. Okay, don't finish that stitch, change your color, then chain up 1 and flip your work. So you're going to continue making these normal rows of houndstooth stitch until this top part reaches, I would say, just below your armpit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep on going just with these normal rows, and once I'm about done, I will try the whole dress on so far, and you can see what I mean when I say just under your armpit, so that hopefully when you guys see how it looks on my body, you can mirror it for your own body as well. So just keep on doing your normal rows, and I will see you in just a second. Alright, so as you can see, this is where the top part ends, where I was doing the normal houndstooth stitch. So it's like just below my armpit right there, if you can see. Alright, and also this is the back seam right here, so you're not going to see this at the front. So once you have reached just about this point on your body, this is where you are going to stop doing the normal houndstooth stitch rows. So let's get into starting the shoulder straps. Okay, so this is going to be the end of step 3. So I did a total of 21 rows for all of step 3. So I did 3 rows of the decreasing stitches and then 18 rows of the normal houndstooth stitch. And it was just about 8 inches long for the top. So now we are going to move on to step 4, which is where we start making this decreasing part that starts the shoulders. To start step 4, you're going to first count the number of stitches you made in your very last row and divide by 2. So say you had 30 stitches, you divide that by 2 and you're going to get 15 stitches for each side of the shoulder. So I have 31 stitches here, but we are just going to pretend that I only have 30. So pretend that this stitch doesn't count. So what I'm going to do is I'll count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then you'd place 1 stitch marker here. Then you'd count from the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And you'd place your other stitch marker next to it. So the first little shoulder strap you're going to do would go to the first stitch marker, and then your second shoulder strap would go to the second stitch marker. But for me, I had an odd number of stitches. I had 31 stitches, so when I divide that by 2, I get 15.5 stitches. So what I did was I put my stitch marker in the 16th stitch of the row, and I'm going to be working both sides of my little shoulder straps into the same stitch. So if you have an odd number of stitches, you're going to be working that first decrease into just the exact same stitch. If you have an even number of stitches on this last row, you'll be working it into 2 different stitches. I hope that kind of makes sense. So let's just get started on the very first row. Alright, so for this first half of the shoulder part, we are going to be decreasing only on the inside of the top, and this side, the outside, is going to be staying straight. So to start this, we are going to first make a double crochet because this stitch is a single crochet. And then in the next stitch, a single crochet. So you're just going to be alternating the houndstooth stitch as we've been doing until you reach the stitch right before your stitch marker. Alright, so we are at the stitch right before the either first stitch marker or the only stitch marker, depending on how many stitches you had in the previous row. So what I'm going to do is I'll take the stitch marker out, and I'm going to make a decreasing houndstooth stitch in these next 2 stitches. So as you can see, I have a single crochet, so we'll start the decrease with a double crochet. Alright, and then the next stitch, finish with a single crochet, and then what we're going to do is drop that first color, pick up the second color, then yarn over and pull through all 4 loops. So now you're going to chain up 1, flip your work. Takes a bit to flip the work now. And we are going to make another decrease on these first 2 stitches. So let's bring you up closer. All right, we're going to first start with the single crochet, yarn over, pull through, and then double crochet in the next stitch. All right, 4 loops on your hook, you yarn over and pull through all 4. Then continue with the houndstooth stitch all the way to the very end of this row. Okay, now don't finish your last stitch. Pick up your other color and finish. Then you'll chain up 1, flip your work again, and as you can see, we are making the decreases only on the inside portion, and the outside is staying straight, staying the same, I guess you could say. So really you're just going to be repeating this last row until you like the width of the shoulder strap. So however either wide or skinny you like this shoulder strap, continue to decrease until you have the desired width. So I'll just show you guys again, making this one this side straight. So we're going right in there with the houndstooth. And you'll just continue alternating until you get to the last 2 stitches. And in the last 2 stitches, you make a decrease, change color, chain 1, and then just repeat the process until you are happy. So this is where my decrease ended, right below my shoulder. Now, if you're trying to mirror exactly what I'm doing, I would also recommend stopping your decrease right about at this point on your body. So just try your dress on again and see pretty much where you are. Now, after this part, we are going to finish up the top of the shoulder with just normal rows of houndstooth stitch. So this is where I'm stopping, as I just showed you. I did a total of 8 decreasing rows, and it was just a little bit over 3 inches. You can see that's how long this was. Now, of course, just work until you're comfortable with how this looks on. So this whole tutorial is really trial and error. So once you're comfortable with your decreasing part, we're going to move into just a few rows of normal houndstooth stitch to complete this first shoulder. As you can see, I've already changed color. Now all we're going to do is chain up 1, flip our work, and then we're just going to do the normal houndstooth pattern all the way down. So my first stitch is a single crochet, so I'll make 1 double crochet, and then we're alternating. Okay, so now we're at the very last stitch, so we'll start our stitch, drop that first color, pick up the second color, pull through, chain 1, flip our work, and then continue with just the normal houndstooth stitch all the way down the row. So what I'm going to do is I'm making 6 total rows of the normal houndstooth stitch, and that I believe was just a little bit over 2 inches long. So once I'm done with this, just the rows of normal houndstooth stitch, I'll come on back, try it on, and show you guys where it's hitting me once I'm totally done with this first shoulder. Alright, so this is where I am finishing up my shoulder strap. So this is the completed first shoulder strap. Now, as you can see, it hits about right here. So it doesn't go up to the very top of my shoulder, it hits just right about here. And the reason for that is because once we put the top and back piece together, this part is going to stretch because of the acrylic yarn. So if I made this go all the way up to the center of my shoulder, the top would be a little bit baggy. So if you want the top a little more baggy, then I just recommend keep going until the top of your shoulder and you'll get that effect. But if you're trying to mirror the dress in the exact same way I am making it, then stop right about here. So like I just showed you, I'm just finished with the first shoulder strap. So the total length of this first shoulder strap was just about 5.5 inches, and I did a total of 14 rows. So 8 rows of the decreasing and 6 rows of the normal houndstooth stitch. So once you are totally done with your first strap, what you want to do is you're going to finish up that very last stitch with the same color. You'll chain 1, and then what I like to do is leave a bit of a tail because we're going to end up sewing this shoulder strap to the shoulder strap that corresponds on the back once we make that. So I'm just going to leave about this much, cut, and then I'll pull on through. Alright, so we can use this to weave in the shoulder strap, or weave together the shoulder strap. Then you're also going to want to cut off this end as well. Alright, so that is the first shoulder strap done. So now let's move on to the second one, which is going to start over here. So before starting the second shoulder, you want to make sure that your piece is laying in the same way it was when you started your first shoulder strap. So you started over here and you ended right here in the middle. So that means for the second one, we are going to start in the middle and end on the side so we keep the pattern going. Now for everyone that had the even number of stitches on their last row, you should have a stitch marker right here in the stitch next to the one that we made the last decrease in. So for the even number people, you are going to start in this stitch. Now for everyone that had an odd number of stitches in their last row right here, you're going to start the second shoulder in the same stitch that you ended the first shoulder on. Now I had the odd number, so I'm going to start my first decrease stitch in this first stitch right here that actually already has a stitch in it. So you're going to take the same color that you started your first shoulder with, make a slip knot, insert it into either stitch depending on the number of stitches you had in this row. So for me it's going to be this one. Then you're just going to slip stitch and chain one. So because we are making the decreases on the inside of the top, our first two stitches are going to be a decrease stitch, and then the rest are going to be the normal houndstooth stitch. So let me bring you guys in closer. So in the first stitch you made the slip stitch in, what you're going to do is make a decreasing stitch. So my first stitch, as you can see, is a double crochet, so I'll insert and start a single crochet. Then at the next stitch I'm going to start a double crochet, and then with 4 loops on my hook I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 4. Alright, so in the next stitch I'll make a single crochet, in the following stitch a double crochet, and I'm just going to alternate all the way until I get to the very end of this side. Alright, so in that last stitch you're not going to finish the stitch. Instead, you're going to pick up your second color and pull through to finish it up. Then you'll chain one, flip your work. All right, and then in this side, because it's the outside, we're keeping this side straight, just like on our other shoulder. So that means we are doing the normal houndstooth stitch, alternating all the way until we reach the last 2 stitches of this row. Okay, now we're at our last 2 stitches, so we are going to do a decreasing houndstooth stitch in these last 2. All right, with 4 loops on your hook, drop that yarn, pick up your non-working yarn and pull it through all 4. Then you'll chain 1, flip your work, and you are just going to continue repeating exactly what we did for the first shoulder strap over on this side. So once you are completely done with this portion, come on back and I will show you how to get started on the back part of the top. Voila, we are done with the first top panel. So now we are going to flip this baby over and get started on the second panel. Now the second panel is going to start at the other stitch marker that you have in your skirt. So find the color that you started the first panel with. So for mine that was white. Make a slip knot and put it on your hook. To start the second panel, what you're going to do is take that stitch marker out, and then with the slip knot on your hook, you're going to insert into that stitch and then just make a slip stitch. All right, then chain 1, and for the first row of this second panel, we're going to make a decrease in the first 2 stitches and a decrease in the last 2 stitches right before the first panel starts again. So first going to make a decrease, going to insert into that very first stitch. Okay, then also the second stitch. And so there's our first decrease. Then you're going to continue the houndstooth stitch all the way until the last 2 stitches before the first panel starts. All right, now we're at the last 2 stitches before that first panel starts. So we're going to make a decrease in both of these stitches. All right, so when you have 4 loops on your hook, grab your second color and then pull through the stitch, chain 1, flip your work, and then for the whole of the second panel, you are going to repeat every single step we did for the very first panel. So it's going to mirror exactly what the first panel looks like. So just repeat all steps from the first panel for this second panel, and once you are done, come on back and I'll show you how to attach the shoulder straps together. So you should now be done with your first and second panel. So what you want to do now is turn your dress to the side that you don't think you're going to wear as often, so inside out. I think I'm going to wear this white side more often rather than the black side. So I turned it inside out to the black side so that we can now start joining our shoulders together. So I know I had you guys leave a long tail at the end to weave the shoulder pieces together, but I decided that a slip stitch join would make this much more secure. So we are instead going to make slip stitches all the way across our shoulder tops. So grab either color yarn, make a slip stitch and put it on your hook. And what we're going to do is we'll call this the front panel and this the back panel. In the front panel, we are going to work the slip stitch into the front loop only. And on this back panel, we are going to work into the back loop of each stitch only. So we'll insert into the very first stitch on this front panel, and we're only picking up the front loop. All right, so just the front loop. And then in the back panel, we're picking up the back loop only. All right, so now once we have that, we're just going to slip stitch all the way through. All right, then in the very next stitch of both of these panels, I will insert into the front loop only of the front panel and the back loop only of the back panel. Then we'll just slip stitch, and you're going to continue to do that in each stitch all the way down. Okay, so once you finish that very last stitch, you're going to chain one, grab your scissors, and you're going to cut and pull through. All right, so you're just going to repeat this, what we just did here, over on the other side of your shoulder. And once you're done with that, the whole body of this dress should be done. Okay guys, so this is what your dress should look like once your shoulders are seamed together. So hopefully it looks a little something like this. Okay, so once you are done with that and your dress is actually fully constructed, we are now going to move on to doing the ribbing around the arms and the neck. And you could do ribbing around the very bottom as well, but I just was too lazy to do that. So let's get right into finishing up this dress. So to begin the ribbing, we are going to start working on the armholes first. And you're going to pretend that you don't see this neck ribbing right now, okay? We're going to work on this part first. So grab whatever color yarn you want to use for your ribbing, and you're also going to need a 4mm crochet hook for this. So make a slip knot and let's get ready to start working on the first part of the ribbing. We're going to want to start the ribbing at the top of the shoulder seam, so right over here. And to do this, I'm just going to insert a little bit before the shoulder seam. So I will insert into just this stitch right here. I'm going to make a slip stitch to attach and then chain up one. So for this first round, I'm just going to be placing one single crochet in each single crochet space and one single crochet in each double crochet space. And I'm going to do this all around the armhole. So I'll start here. And I'm also weaving my ends in as well. See, so just one single crochet in each of these spaces. So it's going to be spaced out kind of like this. So just continue to do this all the way around the armhole until you reach the very beginning of the round. I also forgot to mention that once you get down to the very bottom of the armhole, so right in here, we're going to skip one of these stitches. So I'm just going to skip this stitch and go into this stitch right here. And that's just kind of going to round it out a little bit more. Okay, just keep making one single crochet until the very end of the round now. So now that we're back at the beginning, we will slip stitch into that very first single crochet, and now we've joined the round together. So we'll start on the ribbing part by chaining up 4. Then we're going to work back down this chain. So starting in the second chain from your hook, you're going to make 1 single crochet. All right, I'm just picking up that top loop only. Okay, and then we'll just make 1 single crochet in the next 2 chains as well. All right, so we will consider this row 1. So now we are going to insert a hook into this next stitch right here and make a slip stitch. Okay, you want to make sure that slip stitch is kind of loose, and this is just going to attach the rows to our dress. Now I'm going to chain up 1. We're going to flip our work, so just this little row right here. And then in the back loop only of this first stitch, I'm going to make 1 single crochet. So it kind of looks like this is a stitch right here, but it is not, so just be aware of that. This will be our first stitch. So inserting into the back loop only, oops. Okay, we're going to make 1 single crochet. All right, we'll work into the back loop only of the second stitch as well and make 1 single crochet. And then in the very last stitch, we are going to work through the whole stitch. So make sure you pick up both the front and back loops. Okay, and we'll make 1 single crochet. So as you can see, you're going to have 3 stitches for each row. Now we'll chain up 1, flip our work, and make 1 single crochet in the back loop only of each stitch. And this chain 1 is not going to count as a stitch. So in the very first stitch, we'll insert into the back loop only and single crochet. Oops, it's a bit hard to get into the third stitch. All right. So now we are going to insert our hook into the next stitch of the first round right here to connect the rows. All right, so we're essentially just going to be repeating this, but I will show you guys once more. So again, we'll chain up 1, flip our work, insert into the back loop only of the first stitch, which is right here. Okay, make another single crochet in the back loop of the second stitch, and then in that third stitch, we're going through the whole stitch with a single crochet. All right, then we'll chain up 1, flip our work, and work in the back loop only of each stitch with 1 single crochet. There we go. Okay, and then we are going to insert a hook into this next stitch right here and make a loose slip stitch. So just continue repeating this pattern until you get back to the very beginning of this first round right here. Alright, so I'm almost back at the end here. As you can see, I have one stitch left. So I'm going to slip stitch into that stitch. Then we'll chain up one, and then we'll go back up this row here, again with just single crochets in the back loop only. Okay, we'll chain up one. And now we're going to connect these two rows together. So to do this, we're just going to slip stitch, let's see, into the front loop only. So front loop only of this first row right here. So we'll go into that very first stitch, front loop only. And then these are just chains right here. So we're just going into the bottom loop of these chains. All right, and then we'll just slip stitch that together. All right, then we'll go into the second stitch, front loop only. Sorry, it's hard to get in. There we go. Go into the second chain, then slip stitch. This is so, okay, there we go. Front loop only of the third, then you'll go into the third chain. Slip stitch. We're also going to slip stitch into these bottom, they're not even really stitches, but just these bottom spaces right here, just to kind of close up this gap as well. So I'm gonna just like insert into there, then there. You guys don't have to do this, but I just feel like doing it. All right, I feel like that gives it a little more security. Anyways, you're gonna chain up one, grab your scissors, cut, and then pull through. All right, yeah, that helps it a bit. Okay, so as you can see, it doesn't look too different. And that is going to be how you do the ribbing for the armhole. So you're just going to repeat all of this, all of these steps that we just did on the opposite armhole. And once you are done with that, come on back and I will show you how to start on the neck hole, the neck ribbing. Okay. So with the same color from your arm ribbing, make a slip knot on the 4mm crochet hook, and we're all going to be starting in about the same place for the neck ribbing. So either you're going to start where both of these decreases meet, if you had the odd number of stitches right here. If you had the even number of stitches, your decreases aren't going to meet in one stitch, but rather in two stitches. So one decrease will be here, and one decrease would be, like, say, in this stitch, right? So for everyone that had the odd number of stitches, you're going to start this neck ribbing in the leftmost stitch where, you know, the decrease meets. And then for everyone who had the odd number like me, we are just going to start where both of these decreases meet. So right in this stitch. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm sorry if it didn't. It's kind of hard to explain when I don't have anything to show for it. Anyways, we're just going to make a slip stitch, chain up one, and we are just going to make single crochets in each space all the way around until we get back to the beginning. It's just going to be like the armholes that we did. So that's going to be our first round. So I'll start with one single crochet in that very first stitch, right? One in the next one, and then just keep making one single crochet in each single crochet and double crochet space all the way around the neck. All right, so once we've got back to the beginning of the round, you're just going to slip stitch into the first single crochet. All right, and then where this is going to differ from the arm ribbing is that we are going to make the ribbing from one corner over into the other corner. So we're not going all the way around the neck. we're just going to go from one corner to the opposite corner. So this is where we're going to end. So the ribbing is going to work the same way. We'll chain up 4, make a single crochet in the second chain from the hook, and then in each chain down, slip stitch into the next stitch, chain up 1, flip this work, and then 1 single crochet into the back loop of each stitch, or well, back loop of the first stitch, the second stitch, and then once you get to that third stitch, you're going to go through the whole stitch. All right, chain 1, flip your work, go into the back loop only of each stitch, and then slip stitch into the next stitch. You're just going to continue to repeat this all the way until you get to this back corner right here. So I'll meet you guys at the end of this ribbing. Alright, so I'm actually at the stitch right before the very corner stitch right here. So I'll slip stitch into this next stitch, chain up 1, flip the work, then do what we've been doing. All right, then I'm going to chain 1 and cut my work. Oops, grab some scissors, cut, and then we'll just pull that through. And that's going to be the end of the first half of our neck ribbing. So now we are going to start the second half in pretty much the exact same way. So this is the very corner stitch right here. Let's just make a slip knot on our hook. All right, so we'll insert into the very next stitch, which is the corner stitch. Make a slip stitch, chain up 4, and then repeat the process all the way until we get to the opposite corner again. So just repeat the exact same thing that we just did. So once you're at the opposite corner like me, make sure that you are stopping at the top of the row, and it should look something like this once you're done. So you're going to chain up 1, leave a little bit of a tail, cut, and then pull through. So the last thing we have to do is to sew down these ends to finish up the neck collar. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to sew this end right here along this edge, and then we'll sew this end along this edge. So with the tail end that you just cut, you want to place a darning needle on there, or just something to weave in your ends. And then we're going to insert the darning needle into that very first stitch. So we're going to lay this end, or this end, along this edge. So just try to find a place that it looks okay. Then all I'm going to do is just insert into the back edge of this. So I might not even necessarily go through an actual stitch. Okay, so that is the first place that we've sewn it down. So now we're just going to weave this back and forth. Got to make sure to keep placing it All right, so insert. I'll try to go through that. Sorry, it's hard to show. So I'll go through here, then I'll try to place it through that second stitch. Pull that down tight. Go through that third stitch right there. And into the back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start sewing this edge, this end onto this edge. Okay, so we've kind of sewn together that first part, so now it's time to sew the second part. So I'll insert to here, and I'm really not going into any specific stitches or spaces. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of going through wherever this part sits. So then I'm just gonna, but I am going along this edge right here. So all right, still making sure that everything's looking okay. Oopsie, that didn't go where you wanted it to. All right, so these two ends are now like officially sewn down. If you want, you can sew down like this end to here and this end to here, but I'm not going to do that. So to finish this up, I'm just going to make kind of like a knot. So what I'll do is just kind of insert into a stitch right here. Then once you have it like this, just place the end through this loop. Okay, pull that tight. You could do that a few times if you like, and then just weave this end in to hide it. So just kind of weave it back and forth a few times and cut off your excess. I'll just do that for now because this video is getting too long. So once you're done with that, you would just cut this end off and you would repeat all of these steps on the opposite side of the collar. So once you're done sewing the neck together, the only thing you have left to do is to weave in all of your ends and your dress will finally be complete. With that, this tutorial has officially ended, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Bye.